No, we cannot hear you. Um,
Here's now, Jesse.
yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead, ma'am.
One second. There's an echo. I turned my. Oh, okay. Just turn mine off. Can you hear us okay now?
Yes, yes. It's a little garbly. It's been better in the past, but I can hear you. Can't hear you, Corey. If you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Jesse, can you hear us?
Ah, there. Yes, Don, you sound great.
Thank you.
We're okay.
Okay, all right, well, we apologize for that technical interruption, but ma'am, go ahead. You have the floor.
Is that my 5 minutes? I just want to introduce myself. I'm Jane Braga. I'm your League of Women Voters Observer Corps visitor for today. So we will try to be at each of your meetings, and today's mine. Can't wait to hear what Steve has to say.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public would like to speak? Seeing none, how about on the web there, Corey?
Not at the moment.
All right, and we will close public forum and go to the
The board meeting of September 12th, 2023.
Anybody have any changes, additions, alterations of the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move.
Corey, I lost sound again. Corey, I did lose sound again. Still no sound. I just texted Corey.
Ingrid's going to present the fiscal year auditors reports. I'm going to be her clicker on here. Hopefully our PowerPoint works, but anyway, I'll hand it over to you, Ingrid. Please press the button to turn on the green light. Hopefully that still works. Off we go.
Good morning. I'm here to present the results of the 2023 audit. Next slide.
So make sure I get here.
So this is the list of the reports that we issued as a result of our audit. They should be included in your packet. First and foremost, we issue an opinion on the financial statements. And as a result of the federal funding the district receives, we also issue a separate report on internal control and compliance. And then there's 2 letters. One contains required communications, and then also a management letter if we had any recommendations. So I'll hit the highlights of those reports today. So the next slide is the results and observations. We issued what's considered an unqualified or clean opinion on the financial statements. We only have minimal adjustments, just a couple of adjustments were identified during the audit process. We also review internal controls as part of our audit and concluded that the district has no weaknesses in internal controls, and also that the district complied with the federal requirements related to the federal grant funding received. This slide is a snapshot of the asset side of your balance sheet on page 23 of the financial statements. I'm just going to discuss some of the changes there. You'll notice the cash increased by 9.8 million as a result of the positive cash flow from operations. You'll see that restricted cash went down 25 million, and that's because of the COP or debt proceeds received last year for the wastewater treatment plant project. Those monies were expended down during the year. About 19 million was expended. And then you'll notice a corresponding increase there in the capital assets line item. There was a total of 26 million that was spent on capital projects during the year. 20 million of that is for the wastewater treatment plant. That's also offset by depreciation. There was about 3.6 million of depreciation that reduced the capital assets back down. This is the liability section of the balance sheet. You'll notice debt just changed by the amount of payments made during the year. No new debt was entered into during the year. You'll notice the 2 liabilities, the pension and the OPEB, which is the retiree healthcare benefits. Both of those liabilities increased substantially during the year. And that's primarily because of fluctuations in the market. You may note last year I reported that that pension liability went down about 6 million, and that's because the plan assets for the year before, June 30, 21, that happened to be a good day, I think, in the market. So there were a lot of unrealized gains. Well, now the market flipped the other way as of June 30, 21, which, 22, which is the plan asset numbers used to determine this liability. So the investment gains and losses are what's contributing significantly to the amount of your pension and OPEB liability. So that's causing a lot of variations in your balance sheet. This is a summary of the net position or the equity section of your balance sheet. You'll note that your infrastructure assets, which are the investments in capital assets, make up about 97 million of your equity, and that's non-spendable. It's basically your infrastructure. The restricted for capital improvements, that line item is for the capital recovery charges collected from customers in the past. Most of that was spent down, about 6.8 million was spent down during the year on various projects. Then if you look at the unrestricted line items, I segregated out water and sewer. The water still has a deficit net position of 2 million, but that was an improvement over the previous year end. The sewer unrestricted fund balance or reserves did flip the other direction, went from a negative 1.6 million up to a positive 7 million. So so you're getting close to eliminating that that negative overall. This is a summary of the income statement, statement of revenues and expenses. Just to highlight some of the changes there, the operating revenue, which is basically the charges collected from customers, just changed slightly. There was no rate increase during the year, so no significant change there. The operating expenses is showing that it went down $2 million from 20 million to 18 million, but included in that number is these pension adjustments that have to be made to the balance sheet affect the income statement, so it's not a cash transaction. That number actually reduced your expenses by over $3 million. So without that, what I call a paper adjustment, your expenses would be comparable to 2022. So you had a net income from operations of 4.2 million. The non-operating revenue that you're seeing there, that increase of 1.7 is mostly because of the district's investment. You may recall in last fiscal year, the district moved some of its cash into investments. At the end of 2022, the portfolio had an unrealized loss of about 500,000. Well, that also swung the other direction to an unrealized gain of about 660,000. So overall, your net income before any capital related revenues is 6.7 million. The capital contribution number that you're seeing there is mostly the grants that are received for capital projects, and that was about 2.2 million. So overall, your net position increased by 8.9 million. So as far as various other required communications that are discussed in that report, you'll note there that we only had 2 adjustments. I know Steve tries to get none, and these were just error type things, not any indications of any weaknesses. But we keep Steve on his toes, so we did find a couple of mistakes there. But I know it's this is minimal considering the amount of activity of the district. So really, it's not anything serious, but we're required to report that to you. We had one unadjusted difference that really carried over from the previous year related to an accrual that also impacts this year. That letter also discusses areas where significant estimates were used in the preparation of the financial statements. And those 2 significant estimates that I mentioned earlier are the pension liability. So CalPERS does the actuarial evaluation for the pension liability, and the district is part of a pool with all other employers with under 100 employees. CalPERS decided to reduce the discount rate, meaning the rate at which they estimate the portfolio will earn. They lowered the rate from 7.15 down to 6.9%. That contributed to the increase in the liability we saw on the other pages, as well as the investment losses that also increased the liability. For the OPEB, which is the retiree healthcare benefits, that's based on actuarial valuation that the district hires, and I believe that's on your agenda to go over a more current report today. So that varies. Again, the increase there was mainly because of the investment earnings, not any significant changes, any actuarial assumptions. Next is our report on internal control and compliance. And that report is also a clean report, saying we had no weaknesses in internal controls. We look extensively at the controls and processes and determine that the district has good internal controls in place. We also audited for compliance with the grant requirements. There was 20.9 million of USDA funds that were expended for the wastewater plant. So we look at compliance, federal compliance requirements, and determine that the district was in compliance with those requirements. Then we also issued a management letter, and this letter also indicates no material weaknesses. If we had any other recommendations for improvement, those would be mentioned in this letter, but there are no additional recommendations included in this letter. We've had recommendations in past years, and we do continue to monitor those to ensure that those are corrected, and we determined all prior year recommendations have been adequately implemented. So summary, a good clean audit. The district processes and controls are in good shape. So are there any questions, any areas I could clarify for you?
Thank you, Ingrid. Any questions? Okay, Steve?
I'll just tag on, you know, I was the outside auditor for many years in my prior life. And, you know, these auditors, they're gonna find something. So you have to give them at least a couple audit adjustments. And so what I do is I put a couple out there just to test them. And Ingrid always says, did we pass? And yes, they did. But no, in all seriousness, Richardson and Company is one of the leading known firms in the utility business in the state of California. I feel very fortunate that we've had this ongoing relation with them. And they really do an outstanding job as an independent auditor, but also as a resource to the district, whether it's to a general manager, a finance director, or working with grants or whatever. So we're very fortunate. They do a very thorough job. We're able to get this, you know, to me, it's important to get the report to the board by the end of September, because otherwise, how can you act on it? Many districts don't turn it in until the end of December. Well, half the year's already gone. Again, what they're looking at is more a point in time and internal control. So it's as of June 30th, numbers are going to change year to year, but then also the system we have in place here. So this was a tight turnaround this year, and they're extremely busy, and they've done a really good job for us. So Ingrid, thank you for coming here, and thank you, board.
Yeah, I'd just like to say too, I've been through a few audits myself in our businesses and whatnot, and you're exactly right, Steve. I mean, it's a test. It's a test of how well you're doing your business and tracking and complying. And this is a very good outcome on this, and you and your staff should be very proud of that. So thank you. And thank you, Ingrid, for coming down and doing all this for us. We appreciate it.
And at this point, we're just asking the board to accept and file the report.
Okay. And a motion.
Any further discussion from?
Yeah, I'm sorry, discussion first. Okay, we'll entertain a motion. Accept.
I'll make that motion to accept and file the report.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
What, excuse me?
Public comment.
Oh, pardon me, yes.
Yeah.
Public comment. Is there any public comment on the financial report? Jane, no? Anybody out there on the web there, Corey?
No,
Okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Melissa.
Okay, item number 3, presentation of the retiree healthcare plan, June 30th, 2023 actuarial valuation.
Good morning. One down, 2 to go. This is also another critical one. The district provides medical insurance for retired employees subject to certain limitations. This was an existing benefit of the county water district at the time TUD was formed in 1992. This type of employee benefit is referred to as other post-employment benefits, or OPEB, as you heard Ingrid refer to. Have a safe trip home, Ingrid. Thank you. TUD is required to measure and disclose an amount for annual OPEB cost. Annual OPEB cost is determined by an actuarial valuation required every 2 years. Actuarial valuations involve estimates and assumptions about the probability of occurrence of events far into the future. I call it voodoo accounting, but actuaries don't always agree with that. But with us today, we have Doug Pryor, and Doug Pryor is one of the managing people with, now it's Foster and Foster. It used to be Bartell for a lot of years. But Doug and his crew have been doing our work for a while now. So I believe Doug's going to share. Who's in? If you're there, Doug, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Steve. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and hopefully I successfully screen shared the PowerPoint.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Great.
it's up as well.
Thank you. Good to be with you today. My apologies for not being able to actually be there in person. Scheduling just didn't work out, unfortunately. But let me you have the full report in your packet, but there's a lot of details in there. I'm just going to kind of run through an overview of what's in that full report. So this is the June 30, 2023 actuarial valuation. GASB requires that these valuations be prepared every 2 years. So I had a presentation a couple of years back on the 2021 valuation. This report covers kind of recommended plan funding for the next 2 fiscal years upcoming. Talk briefly about benefits. As Steve mentioned, there's kind of a legacy benefit here for employees hired back in 05, before 05 and 06, with caps currently at about $1,200 to $3,100 per month, depending on the coverage provided. So to get this benefit for all the tiers we're talking about, you need to retire directly from the district. Then with the premium that's paid is basically the premium, or the amount that's paid by the district is the premium up to the caps listed. So you have the 3 tiers here. I covered the first tier, second tier, lower caps, as you can see here, depending on what coverage the retiree selects, single, dual, or family. And there's also for this tier a vesting schedule that's applied. So you need 20 years of CalPERS service to get the full benefit or the full cap on this group. And then the final tier for all those employees hired on or after May 1 of 2013, there's a statutory minimum amount that is required to be paid by any agency that's participated in the CalPERS medical program that has the acronym PEMCA, currently $151 per month. All of this is medical benefits paid by the district. There's no dental, vision, or life or Medicare Part B reimbursement. Historically, what has this meant in terms of what the district has paid towards retirees? We have almost 15 years stored up here. You can see the escalation from about 200,000 way back in fiscal year 2010 to a little under $777,000 in fiscal year 2023. You're funding through a trust, and we get to that shortly, but these are the amounts of the premiums paid to retirees. There's also this very esoterical construct that's known as the implied subsidy that's included. I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention this, so let me kind of run through this quickly. PEMCA, the healthcare provider, charges the same premium regardless of age. We see here is a green line is a medical premium at $600. As we get older, we use more medical services. That's illustrated by the blue line here that's ramping up. Age is across the x-axis. So what happens is at age 64, PEMCA, the healthcare provider, charges a $600 premium, but really costs $800 to provide medical services to that retiree. Where does that $200 come from? Well, it comes if you go way over here to the left, and they charge that same $600 premium, but in theory, that only costs $400 to provide the coverage. So that $200 difference is a subsidy that's embedded in the active premium that the district pays that's implied to be really a payment towards the retirees on the other side. A lot is really going on within PEMCA. This is a very complicated thing. This is a very simplistic overview of how it works. But nonetheless, through GASB standards and actuarial standards of practice, we're required to include this in the study. Historical, just kind of want to cover who's in this plan. So as of the June 30, 23 evaluation, at about 79 active employees. there were 67 retirees that were receiving a benefit. What you see here is that ratio of 1.2 to 1. So we kind of anticipate that may kind of level out, because what you're going to see that ratio, you're probably not going to have huge growth in retirees in the future, in part because of that third tier benefit. Not going to see a lot of employees actually that retire sign up for that because the benefit's so small, right? If you have a benefit paying full premium, you're going to see almost all of your former employees, when they retire, sign up for medical. If you pay a very small amount, a lot of you will be able to find other options for medical and not end up with a district payment. Let's talk a little about the trust now. So you're investing with the CalPERS OPEB trust, known as the CERBT. They actually have 3 investment strategies. The district is in the first strategy here, which is the most traditional investment vehicle here. And these are the asset allocations for the trust that you're in. And one of the reasons I wanted to mention this year is because since that previous study, CalPERS did make an adjustment on the portfolio. And what they've done is really kind of pulled money from in the allocation from the equity and fixed income and put it into the REIT. So a couple of years ago, this REIT allocation was, I believe, 8%, and now it's up to 20%. So there has been a change as of like a couple of years ago, roughly a little less than that. We do an analysis on these investment vehicles based on a survey of investment advisors, and overall, we're coming up with a long-term expected return of 6.25%, which is used for the discount rate. Real brief background on funding as we start to get to the asset information and the actual funded status. The district has been ramping up in recent years to pay the full recommended contribution, and as of fiscal year 2000 ending 2024, the fiscal year that we're in now is now at 100% funding target. Before there's kind of a ramp up to get there. Assets, as Richardson reported, 2021-22 was a pretty poor investment year, negative 13.5% return for that year. That was followed up with CalPERS in the CRBT trust getting a little back to normal, perhaps at 6.5% return. But certainly, if you look at this overall over the 2 years, actually was a negative return compared to our 6.25% assumption. So when we get to kind of results, what you're going to see is the kind of uptick in the unfunded liability or uptick in the contributions that are expected to or needed to be made to fund this plan over the long term. I didn't go into any of these numbers, but these are in thousands of dollars. As of the valuation date, what you see here is you have about $10.7 million roughly in assets in the trust. Just a quick historical perspective. This is showing going back to the beginning of time when the district started pre-funding with the trust, the money that's kind of come in, as well as the additional investment return that's been generated. So the green bars are the contributions that came into the trust. These also are in thousands of dollars. The blue is the investment return that was generated on the trust in each year. So if you took all these bars and stacked them up, you get to the total trust value of that over $10 million in the trust. And you can see kind of what a rocky road it's been the last couple of years in fiscal year in 21 and 22. 21 was an exceptional year, generating that huge blue bar for the investment return. 22, pretty dismal. And as I said, kind of bouncing back in 2023. In terms of the funded status, how does this look? Well, what you see here is a comparison of the previous study with the current. So actual accrued liability is really a portion of the benefits that have been accrued or earned to date. It's kind of a target asset value. And what you see here is in 2021, accrued liability about 15.5 million, assets 9.6, so an unfunded liability of about 5.9 million. That number has actually grown to 7.9 million as of June 30th, 23. There actually were obviously a number of changes that came in between the two valuations. While the assets did grow somewhat, The liabilities also grew at a quicker rate due to a number of things, primarily premiums increasing by more than expected. If you look at the funded ratio, what you see here is a decline from about 69% funded down to about 56% funded. So that's kind of the bad news. If you look at this longer term, which is what this chart is showing, you can see the significant progress you've made. So what this is showing, going back to the 2008 study, the height of each bar is actual accrued liability. Within each bar, we have the colors. The green is the liability for actives. The blue, whether light or dark blue, is for retirees. And then you can see the assets and the asset growth over time. The funded ratio here, the ratio of assets to accrued liability, is noted by the percentages here. So you can see while there's been a little bit of a setback perhaps in 2023, you can see the significant progress you've made over the long term, and certainly the plan is on a prudent path. So what does this mean in terms of contributions? Each valuation determines a recommended contribution for 2 fiscal years. So what we have is here's a comparison of the 2021 and 23 results. If you kind of look at the 2 closest years in 2021, 2023-24, based on the previous study, for the year we're in, the actual determined contribution was a little over $1 million, and we're seeing an increase in that number for next year based on the new study to about $1.3, $1.4 million. The district historically has, rather than pay the full 80 actual determined contribution and then pull benefit payments out of the trust, and a lot of agencies take this approach. Why have money go in just to come right back out, almost immediately or certainly within a year? And so what you've done historically is what's kind of shown in this section is there's the actual determined contribution of $1 million for this year. We expect benefit payments to be at about $846,000. So those are going to be paid, and then the net trust contribution would be $180,000. So for the next 2 fiscal years, what we're looking at is numbers closer to $360,000 to $380,000 for a contribution in those years. Let me then go on to kind of a projection to show bigger picture where we see things going down the road. So here is on the valuation, the 2 years we were looking at, 25 and 26. Here's that pre-funding of 360 to 380 into the trust. And then the total contribution here. We have this percent, which is the phase-in percent, which you're now, I think, as I mentioned, at 100%. I suppose this column is a little redundant, but it's nice to emphasize that you're at 100% going forward. So one of the things you'll see here is pre-funding is really the amount in addition to pay-go that you're paying. And you can see this number is positive for quite a while. I mean, the fact of the matter is if you're pre-funding and every time the actuary comes back to you and says, well, make your benefit payments to retirees and put money into the trust, you'd probably be scratching your head at some point going, why are we doing this, right? The idea is at some point, you're going to lower your costs below that pay-as-you-go amount. And what you see here is you expect to kind of reap the benefits of pre-funding about 9 years out. And you see in that year, contribution, really what this is saying is you have to pay $621 less than the pay-as-you-go. So if you're looking at this from a pay-as-you-go, the benefit payment perspective, you've then at that point in time finally reduced your OPEB costs below what you would have without pre-funding by about $621,000. And the benefits of that, this doesn't go past 10 years, but you expect to see significant savings from the pre-funding out indefinitely into the future. Okay. So I kind of ran through what was a long actuarial report very quickly here. But I certainly would love to open up to see if there's any questions on anything I covered or anything that I maybe jumped through too quickly.
Any questions? Director Bannon.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. I was doing my best to keep up. And I have a question on Ingrid's slide. She had a slide for OPEB that for health benefits, there was a large increase, and the little note said it was due to investment loss. And I'm just seeing if I'm tracking with, and then, yeah, you've got slide number 7 here, the market value of plan assets. Is that reflected here between that approximate return? Or like, am I
Yes.
just not even tracking what you're saying?
No, I think you are. And I think just needs a little clarification. So in the GASB accounting information for fiscal year in 23, there's a June 30, 22 measurement date. So everything you're looking at there in the financial statement is as of June 30, 22. And so the assets that are shown there are going to be about this $9.8 million. There's a slight difference here in the assets that are shown there versus here, because these are based on unaudited quarterly statements that the CRBT issues, and the financial statement is going to be based on the audited assets that CalPERS releases. So that report, that the financial statement is reflecting really just this column, which has that negative 13.5% return.
Doug, I really think what Ingrid, hopefully Director Balin's question, what Ingrid was referring to was the increase in the unfunded liability. So on the books, the net OPEB liability, I think you had a slide there showing that.
This one?
Yep. And Ingrid was basically saying, no, I don't think it's that one. It was the reason for the increase in the unfunded liability. And Ingrid's explanation was, part of it was the investment performance that caused for the increase in the unfunded liability. Follow?
Yeah. And so I think, but what's happening here is, when you look at the financial statement, it's as of a date in between these two, right? We have June 30, 21 here and June 30, 23. And what you have in that financial statement is a measurement at June 30 of 21, which includes that negative return for 21, 22. And so that's why you're going to see a higher unfunded in that statement.
The challenge for all the directors here is that, this thing with the economy, our new world order, okay, it was 21, 22, 23. And so there was this huge drop off in 22. PERS is always a year behind. The actuarial evaluation we're doing every 2 years. And I think what Ingrid was trying to indicate is both the PERS and the OPEB net liability, which is our unfunded liability, both went up. And a sizable the majority of the reason for that was investment income down 22, investment income expected to be up 23. And then what's 24 or vice versa in there. I know in the one packet we had, Doug, you kind of had a reconciliation showing the change due to increase in health insurance, the change due to the investment performance, that sort of thing. But I think, does that help, Barbara?
Yeah, and I think where it comes back to the board is our unfunded liability increases due to low return on some investments.
Yeah, and when you're talking OPEB, to me, and Doug can chime in here as well, it's driven by cost of health insurance, first and foremost. So like just now, we're expecting 11% increase for the majority of our employees. We've had even higher than that, and we've had some years lower than that. And the challenge is, especially like with PERS in their retirement, that ideally they're making enough in the investment market that it can offset the increase in the health insurance or the cost of retirement. And that's just hasn't been the case. I mean, it's a really good year, then you have a bad year and back and forth. OPEB, first and foremost, is we inherited a promise to provide health insurance to our retirees. And back when we did that in 92, I know you guys heard me say this before, it was $200 a month. Okay, and everybody thought, oh, okay, that's a great retirement perk. You saw the numbers here, it's now $3,400 a month for that. So we made that promise. We established a trust to fund this going forward. And the idea is that the market gets good enough, the trust will be able to offset, like Doug said, right now, come year 33, we're good. We're hoping to get there sooner, but it's a moving target. And so we're paying into the trust to continue this promise to our employees. We implement a vesting schedule that reduced the district's cost. And then PEMCA or PEPRA came along and further reduced that for any employees hired after 2013. So what Doug's showing us is that based on the historical death rate, based on the historical cost insurance, based on how long retirees work for, everything else, these are the anticipated liabilities over the life of the participants. It's not like a mortgage where we have to pay this in every year, but we're doing everything we can to get to that golden area where it's paying for itself. And that's what this is tracking and saying. So I think you're right, Barbara, what you said. And that's what we were hearing from Ingrid's side. It's, hey, your unfunded liability went up. Last year at the same time, she sat up here and said, good news, your unfunded liability went down. You know, first time that happened in a while, and I expect it to go down next year. I mean, based on what we're seeing right now, but so.
A follow-up question?
Sure.
Yeah,
It's
thanks,
tough,
Steve.
right?
No,
I
that
mean,
was
this
it.
is
Yeah,
complicated stuff.
You put some, you just clarified it. I really appreciate that. So a little follow-up question, regarding, there was a statistic, I think, here, we are funding retirees at a ratio of 2.1. And it used to be a long time ago, 3. Correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is, yeah, here we go. Yeah. Oh, 1.2. Okay. That means for every person working, there was 1.2 employees retired.
For every retiree, there's 1.2 employees. So back here, there were, 3 employees for every 1 retiree. And now that ratio is down to 1.2 retirees for every employee.
Okay, I think I had.
I'm sorry, what I said that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I said the last part backwards.
Oh, I didn't get that
1.2
right.
actives per retiree.
They
Okay,
have 79 actives and 67 retirees right now.
Right.
okay.
For
All right.
June 30th.
Yeah, it's almost it's really interesting when you think of a workforce essentially that's hidden. I mean, it's not hidden, but we are paying
Right.
for an additional person. Yeah. And that's true with a lot of other agencies too. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
and
thank
if-
you. I'm sure I have more questions. My brain just isn't working that fast. So,
That's good. And if you looked at your CalPERS retirement plan, you almost surely have even more retirees than active employees.
yeah.
Right. OPEB is a little kind of younger in nature. And so those ratios are a lot higher in terms of the number of actives you have per retiree.
Okay. Thanks, Doug. No further questions from me.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Any other questions from directors? Okay. Public comment on OPEB? Nobody here. How about on the web there, Corey?
No.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the directors.
To accept it?
Yeah. Sure.
I'll move that we accept this report.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept this report. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
I
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, thank you for coming, Doug, and board as well. This is a group early on we got involved with. They're just a class act. They do a tremendous number of agencies. They do the county here and they do a tremendous number of agencies throughout California. And Doug's just been a pleasure to work with and they really do a great job for the district. The good news is we only have to do this every 2 years, but we do look at it every year during budgeting and everything else. And Doug's been a great resource to the district.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Steve.
Sure, yeah, go ahead. Director
Doug,
Bailey.
before you go, I just have a question regarding the other clients that you have. And are they doing things similar in terms of bringing their unfunded liability down over the years?
Yeah, what you've done, the big step you took, well, two big steps. First of all, you started pre-funding back in 09, right? And I didn't cover it when we looked through that history of what you put in, but a lot of money was put in initially, and then there was a gap there a little bit on the funding, and then it started back up with ramping. So the big thing is you started pre-funding, setting money aside in the trust for this benefit. That's helped a lot. And then the second thing is that second tier, the third tier for employees hired after 2013 to go the minimum benefit allowable for your retirees. So a lot of agencies have done, similar things. I think in terms of our clients, you're probably kind of in the middle, a little above in terms of being in a better position on a funded status basis. Our clients, though, tend to pre-fund more than other agencies across the state. So I think if we don't have data statewide, we have data on our clients where you're in the upper half in terms of being in a good funding position. If you look across the state, I bet you're probably in the upper quarter, upper 25% of plans and agencies across the state with respect to OPEB. In terms of the funded status.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That was helpful. Thanks.
Good question. Thank you. Okay, thanks again, Doug. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa.
Okay, item number 4, annual 66013D capacity charges report for year 2023.
Last one, I promise. This one's probably the most housekeeping type item out of the three of them for sure. Essentially, the purpose of the attached capacity charges report, which you'll hear me refer to as 66013, for fiscal year 23 is to comply with the government code section. The report details the charges deposited, the beginning and ending balances of the funds, and the interest earned. Description and amount of expenditures of funds, including the percentage funded by capacity charges, improvements anticipated to be undertaken in the following fiscal year, and a description of each interfund transfer or loan made from capacity charges. So in your board packet, I don't have a presentation to put up on screen, but essentially there's these 5 pages with these required tables and activities that we have for this fiscal year. Once it's brought to the board, it's adopted, it'll be posted on our website as it's required to be. A good question came from Director Balin in there. There's always some confusion when we throw out this term capacity fees. And, Jesse's here, and it's a confusing the way the law was written. If you go from agency to agency, you'll hear them throw out terms, connection charges, hookup fees, capacity fees, all this sort of thing. But 66013 was very specifically written as to how these are the most restrictive funds that the district collects. And like I said before, different agencies call them different things, have different ones. If you go to our water rules or our sewer ordinance, they even refer to it in different terms. I think General Manager Perkins and I have had conversations about this. But, when 66013 came on board and we started doing this, a lot of agencies don't even do this report, but we do it every year. It's required. We reached out to Jesse and he provided us a memo as far as based on our existing ordinance and our water rules, what specifically is subject to this and what's not. You heard Ingrid talk about capital recovery fees. That's something we used to have in sewer, and that's kind of a different animal than these here. So it's not part of this report, but Jesse, helped us design the report to comply with it and do it. So other than that, it's relatively straightforward. It does not tie directly into the audit numbers or anywhere else. Again, this is a highly state mandated compliance type report. And again, the first table is just showing what we collected in terms of these specific charges during the year, what we spent, and if there's any balances, how do we allocate interest to it? Then the next table is going to show how it was funded, which for us, our capacity charges are very small, in terms of the overall spending. And then finally, what is our budget for next year for COAP? And we just updated that as well. So happy to answer any questions. Like I said, it's pretty specific. It doesn't tie into other things. It's just a mandatory annual report. Board gets provided, public gets provided, and that's what it is.
Jesse, you got anything to add on that?
No, President Kearns. Steve has been adopting this or presenting this report for several years. I've looked at it in the past, and as you said, it's very administrative in nature because the money collected from these fees can only be spent or retained in a certain way. And this document simply confirms that TUD is collecting and spending this money consistent with legal requirements. It's very administrative in nature. I have nothing further to add unless there are questions.
Any questions from the board? We got two. Go ahead, Director Bailey.
Oh, you should. I yield to you. Go ahead.
Good morning. So just on page 2, there's a description, it talks about description of charges deposited. I was just curious, on their water fund, there's something called Christian Heights supply and storage fees. Could you maybe fill me in on what that is?
If you go to our specific water rules in the fees section, it has quite a few listed in there. The Christian Heights is a historical thing. We have not had any additions or collected these charges, I believe, in the last 10 years. At the time we did that, there was not a formal surcharge set up for it. However, there was, when we did the supply and storage improvement out there, there was a specific identification of what those costs were. And that if someone were to hook up in the future, then X number of dollars would be collected towards that. It continues to be here. Again, no charges collected. It's part of our water rules when it drops off. I mean, there's several of these items that are legacy based, I guess, if you will. But again, we haven't collected that. Any additions here, it's very specific area, a very specific type of charge. We have several of those, over the years, something very unique or specific comes up. When in doubt, add it into the rules. That's how they get to be so comprehensive. We do need to go through the rules and do that. It still is in place, but like I said, we haven't had any hookups.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Director Jacobs. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. And when I go back to my August email that I had written, indeed, I wanted some definitions of what the difference between these terms that we use interchangeably. What is a hookup fee? What is a capacity fee and a connection fee, and how they're used interchangeably? And I appreciate this report. However, the other part of my email was the concern that since we had a rate increase that was based on the rising cost of a lot of things, including chemicals and the cost of delivering water. My question was, when we had the ADU, the auxiliary dwelling unit discussion, that we take a look at not just having the ratepayer have the burden of the increase of all this cost, but to have that factored in to a policy on ADUs. We haven't had the discussion yet, but I'm concerned that regardless of how many new connections we have, I think it's important to have the rising costs that our existing customers are saddled with. I'm not in favor of keeping new hookup fees flat. If this cost goes up, this cost should go up. Now, maybe my thinking is clouded, but that's just the way I think, regardless of how many we have a year. I just think it should be fair.
So, in response, and this is just coming from finance, your finance director, engineering is intricately involved with this capacity charges notion. There's two kind of issues you brought up. One, first of all, this report is based on the compliance within this capacity charge thing. Capacity charges are not related to 218. Capacity charges are not related to operating costs. Okay, so kind of put in your mind, there's one over there, the charge we pay The 218 process we just went through is operating and maintenance, and our charges by state law are designed to cover our operational cost. Most agencies have this notion of a capacity charge. If you're in Marin County and there's not room for one more toilet, okay, you're going to be on waiting list. It's probably going to be $8 million for you to hook up. If you're in some place that's actively growing, Roseville, Lincoln, whatever else, they're putting in tens of thousands of homes all the time. When I first got here, Calaveras County was probably making 2/3 on new development hookup than they were their rates. You know, they had Greenhorn, they had Valley Springs, they had Murphy's, everything was going on. So they're two different animals. And the one thing, though, I will agree with you, though, the cost of going up, when you do a capacity charge analysis, there's various components, whether it's water or sewer. You have supply, you have storage, you have treatment, you know, these other ones. And that really needs to be, it's quite a sizable analysis. I mean, it's way over my head from the technological standpoint. And, you know, I forget, I think it was 2012, around there where we did the last water one, and the sewer one was shortly thereafter. And most agencies revisit that. Now, sometimes they revisit when the board composition changes. It can be very political as far as growth inducing, growth restricting, and that sort of thing. But from a finance perspective, I would agree with you. Costs have gone up. We looked at what does it cost to build a new sewer plant? What does it cost to build a new water treatment plant? So we need to do that. How often do we do it? We talked about this with sewer specifically several years ago. We really need to finish the new sewer plant and then take a look at what is the connection fee going to be? What is the capacity charges? What are the septage charges and that sort of thing? So it's not like, hey, it's flat, let's keep it flat. It's kind of a matter of you need to analyze it and see what costs have gone up. It's clearly more to build a tank right now than it was several years ago. So we need to look at, but it's extremely time intensive. The philosophies and the methodologies that are used are all over the place from agency to agency. But you're right, as far as the definitions, what you're looking at today, this is the definition by state law. What you're referring to would be our definitions within our water rules and regulations and our sewer ordinance. And I do think that's further discussion at another meeting, another time. And the ADU is a whole different animal altogether. Obviously, that's a hot button issue right now, but kind of a different thing that in our water rules and everything else, it's kind of spelled out. If somebody comes at the front counter with a new development, we bring it to the board's attention. We're going to do it based on our existing rules, but certainly there needs to be additional discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I'd like to respectfully request that we have a couple of committees take a look at our sewer committee, the sewer committee and the water committee, take a look at this and also take a look at ADU policy that we already have evidently here so that we can understand it and be prepared for these, for it to come up and change. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Director Boatman.
Mr. Sheffield, are the connection fees that are received each year used in our CIP projects each year? Or is there a rollover fund that these connection fees are in?
As shown in the table here as to where it was spent, there are very specific, first of all, these funds can only be spent on capital projects, okay? And they can only be spent on specific capital projects. If we're collecting a fee designated for storage, we have to spend on storage. We can't go buy a new truck. So you're gonna see in there where we take out the trucks, we take out any of that sort of equipment. And so the general rule is you can only spend monies on what that you collected for the purpose they were collected. So if we collect water fees, it goes to water. If we collect storage fees, it only goes to storage. And that's the purpose of this table and this report, is to show what we collected and whether or not it was spent.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Steve? Director Jacobs?
So just to check my understanding, for example, in the Mono Village tank replacement project, that's going to be a significant expense. Will that affect the capacity charges for users of those tanks?
Now, again, the capacity charges would only be for the new hookup.
New hookups, okay.
So the existing, what we've collected, like right now in storage, we have approximately $44,000. What's a tank gonna cost? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we're gonna spend that. We know that. But these aren't ongoing charges. These are one-time charges. So the capacity charges are you come in, you're a brand new hookup, and you would meet with us. We determine what you're doing, what charges would apply. You pay that and then go forward. They're not designed to specifically, they're designed to provide the additional capacity needs, what that may be. One new house may not generate a new tank, but 100 might. And so again, it's not designed and based to be an ongoing fee like the service charges are. But it is designed to, as we have, because we have a certain amount of capacity available right now. But on the same token, we don't want to put the new users on the backs of the existing users. So that's really what the capacity is set up to do. So the Mona Vista, we need to find out a way to fund that, whether it's grant funded capacity, we'll spend that 44 on it or whatever else, but it's not going to come out of the existing users. The capacity would only be from new connections.
Thank you.
Okay. Turn it over. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jesse.
Thank you, President Kearns. I just wanted to address it, and I think it was just a slip of the tongue when Director Boatwright was talking about connection fees. What we're discussing today are capacity fees. It's a different type of fee. Connection fee is associated with the cost of making a connection. A capacity fee in general terms has to do with you using up that particular connection, using up excess capacity available in the system. That money is now collected and then used for possible improvements or similar purposes. But those two are very different types of charges. Thank you.
Hey, I'll just chime in too. Part of the confusion, what Jesse just said, on water, it's perfectly clear. Okay, water, you get a setup. We'll give you a box, we'll give you a meter. Here you are, $380, whatever it is. Sewer, if you go right here, page 2, it's titled wastewater connection and capital facilities charge. The way it's designed, the way it's set up, that wastewater is a capacity charge. It's titled connection fee, but it's not. So that's some language I think needs to be cleared up. But even the setup fees we collect, we separately account for those, and they go towards the same thing too. I mean, it's designed to pay for that new meter and that new box we installed with water. With sewer, it's just flat out confusing because it says connections right in the title, but it's really not a connection, it's a capacity charge. So sorry to add to the confusion.
Director Ballard.
Is there any reason that we can't get a list of definitions and even some of the little local, hookup fee? We use them interchangeably. You guys use them every day, but we might overthink it and take it too literally. And then we see something like that and we might have a freak out moment. So, I mean, is there a reason we can't get a list of definitions to help the board in this type so that we can refer to it?
Well, I just add to it, Barbara, the issue and the problem is that, these water rules and ordinance are constantly changing. There's things inserted, changed over time. And as I mentioned before, I've looked at probably 30 other districts and they all have different charges. There's no standard definition for it. We can sit here and I know what a hookup is. I know what an ADU is, but it's just not that simple. I mean, it took an attorney, for gosh sakes, and a CPA to figure out how to do this report. And so I agree, it needs to be cleaned up, it needs to be straightened up. And part of it is we need to do a comprehensive water rules, sewer ordinance, overview, tune up, fix for just these type of things. And there is no stand that I'm aware of. Jesse may feel different. I'm not aware of a standard definition because one board may approve this particular charge and another board might. It's not dictated solely by state law as far as the description. So I know that doesn't help or answer, but we'll work on it. I assure you.
Yeah, I would like something by the end of the year, just some kind of cheat sheet. It doesn't have to be standard. It can be our interpretation. And just there'll be enough there on each one that we can for water and sewer that we'll know when you're using that term and what it's about.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. It can be a little bit fuzzy, but still it would be helpful.
I would suggest as a starting point to please read the water and sewer. Keep in mind, they're totally different. But the water rules is very comprehensive. It has glossary, definitions, explanations. It's a good starting point. It's not sufficient to answer everything you're doing in there. But I would suggest the board to look that over as a starting point, and then we can figure out what additional information we can provide or how best to use it.
Can Antonio do something like that? Okay, by the end of the year? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Steve. That was helpful.
Thank you.
Jesse has his hand up.
I was just going to add to Steve's answer to Director Balin. There are certain for some of these subjects like connection fees or capacity fees or rates, there are statutory legal definitions of those. However, there are numerous charges outlined in over a dozen in each the water rules and regulations, as well as the sewer ordinance, where there are surcharges, there are special charges, there are over a dozen. And for those, that is what Steve was addressing as very TUD specific. TUD has created in the very special situations a particular type of charge. And that's what took Steve and I so long to sort out which category, which box does it belong in. But for those three that I just mentioned, rates, service connection fees, and capacity fees, there are statutory definitions. Those three are easy, Director Balin. Everything else may take a little bit of time.
Thank you, Jesse.
Any other questions for Steve or Jesse? Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. Seeing none here. How about on the web there, Corey?
No.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Pleasure.
Is it an exception file?
It is.
Correct. Accept and file.
Yeah, accept and file.
I move that we accept and file the report.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept and file the report. Any other comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Okay, item number 5, presentation by Justin Caparuso, Executive Director, Mountain Counties Water Resources Association.
Welcome, Justin.
Looks like it.
Perfect. Good morning. Thank you all for the invitation to be here. Really appreciate it. Had a great drive this morning. Welcoming out to Mountain Counties region and today with our various members. So appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Justin Caparuso. I'm the Executive Director for the Mountain Counties Water Resources Association, of which you're a member. I'm here today to provide a brief overview of the association and some updates on what we've been up to since I've been on board, and then the vision of where we're going. So Mountain Counties Water Resources Association was formed decades ago and really founded to represent the unique interests of those of us who are working within the Mountain Sierra Nevada region, and really as focus on water rights first and foremost was kind of a big initiative, And has since grown, as you can imagine, into, forest management and a number of other topics that are unique to us as we navigate the state's policies. Our association currently has 57 members. Our membership is broken up into 3 different categories. We have executive members, affiliated members, and associate members. Executive members are water agencies, water districts, and counties within our footprint, which is from Yuba County south to Tuolumne, and then east to the border. So that's our footprint. So, and within that, we have the executive members who really serve as the leadership of the organization. Executive members have the opportunity to sit on committees, they have the opportunity to sit on the board, and they have voting rights, obviously. Our affiliate members are members that fall outside of our region, and they can be, we have, as you can see here, so you have Folsom, Santa Clara Valley Water District or Valley Water as an affiliate member. Really happy to have them as well, because as you see, one of our big strategic priorities really is working with others throughout the state to amplify the needs that we have here in the state region, the mountain region. This is sort of a vision of the landscape in which we cover. We have a 9-member board of directors. Director Baylin sits currently as our vice president. We're grateful for her leadership on our board. We have 6 elected water board members as on our board, and then 3 supervisors. So this is our current board of directors. We have Scott Ratterman as our current president, Corey Yancini is our treasurer from Colorado Irrigation District. Corey Carlin is a supervisor from Colorado County. Of course, we have Director Baylin, who's our vice president. She's also served as president and vice president a number of times. We appreciate her active participation. Director Sue Pope is a Nevada County supervisor. Jim Holmes is a Placer County supervisor. Mike Lee is from Placer County Water Agency. Don Blazer is a supervisor in Yuba County, but he sits as the water agency rep on our board. And then Susan Diegers is with the Water Agency. So just a little bit about me. Probably wearing the same suit actually. I don't wear a suit that often, but yeah, that's my. I have a more than 2 decades of public affairs and issue advocacy experience. My background really is within rural California, not specific to water, but rural California. I most recently served 9 years working for an association called the Rural County Representatives of California, which Tuolumne County is a member, as well as all of the members that follow the county's region. During my time there, had the opportunity to a group of us to found an association called the California Forest Watershed Alliance. And that was really born out of the desire and need to have disparate groups come together to advocate for the protection of our forests as it came to wildfire. Yeah. Quite effective. I served as chair there for a number of years, but quite effective alliance that we had. Our CRC Aqua, which is the Association of California Water Agencies, I'm sure you're aware, California Farm Bureau, Outlands, Cal Forest, Nature Conservancy, Sierra Nevada Conservancy. So a big focus for us that was started by my predecessor, who was with the association for a decade. It has been focused on educating others outside of our region on why the protection of our region is important to the state as a whole. And so we've identified these statewide benefits of healthy headwaters, and are charged with going out and educating legislators, other water agencies and districts, staff members on these statewide benefits, so that when the time comes for us to request something, or there's an issue that we see in policy, they can really make the connection between why we need the resources here for this, because it's going to help you. One of the ways that we do this is through an alliance that we formed a number of years ago called California United Water. And we are Mountain County's Water Resources Association, is joined by Urban Water Institute, Mesa Water, and Bay Area Water Group. Around putting on an event each year. It's usually a tour, provides outreach, education, workshop. The year before last, last year we were in Eldorado County, toward the Caldor fire. So we were able to bring people from Southern California and Bay Area to showcase the impacts of the Caldor fire on our watershed. This current year, we were in Santa Clara, so the Bay Area had the opportunity to kind of showcase some of the projects that they've got working in terms of innovation. And then we'll be in Southern California next year. I would say last spring, the board went through a strategic plan and strategic planning session to develop a strategic plan. And coming out of that, we really wanted to go in and see a number of new board members, a number of new members. I was new to the association in October of 21. And so we were coming out of COVID. We had been a little bit dormant. And so we thought it was a good opportunity to revisit our mission, our vision, and our values. And the board sat through a day-long strategic planning session, and ultimately our strategic plan was released and updated our mission, vision, and values. And our mission is to promote the statewide importance of Sierra Nevada water resources through advocacy and collaboration. Our vision is to be the premier advocate to influence water policy and protections of the Sierra Nevada watershed. And then our values. Leadership, advocacy, collaboration, and education. So going through the strategic planning session, we really tried to narrow our focus and identify, really what the association's value is. And it really is according to the board through the number of workshops that we held. We really think that leadership, collaboration, advocacy, and education. As you all know, collaboration is extremely important when you're dealing with anything to say. We're at a disadvantage from the get-go, just based on geography and where we are. And so collaboration is a must to get anything accomplished. During that process, we also revisited our strategic priorities. They did not change much, which I think it's really a kudos to our executive director and just the board itself. But the priorities remain California's watershed, protection of that, water rights, water supply, forest management, and again, statewide integration. These key priorities go into a little bit more detail. I won't read each of them around the strategic plan and serve kind of to give us provide us with the priorities for the association that we need to go out and advocate. Water policy principles. So our water policy principles were also updated at the beginning of last year. And these water policy principles really guide the association in terms of its advocacy, and they allow for myself and our legislative advocates to go out and advocate on behalf of the association and its members without having to go back to the board, for every little approval. And so we have, the protection of members' existing water rights. You can see I'm not going to read all of these, but proactive science-based forest management practices. We have a water storage, water use efficiency, regional and statewide climate resilience initiatives. We've got positive kind of reporting water suppliers who demonstrate these attributes, including the reduced resilience of water supplies, investment in local and regional water supplies, improved regional self-reliance for water supplies, investment in water use efficiency and reuse, investment in advanced water technologies. And it's really important with a number of these that they've been done correctly, as you can tell, we're right now in the process of doing that committee stood up to address water use efficiency standards and the issues that we're all going to experience in our region. And it's regulations like those that kind of display that are uniquely detrimental to us that we really need to collaborate upon so that we can provide that real-time response around vehicles. So the, in addition to advocacy, outreach and education are the other key components of the association. We do a number of tours each year. We have an upcoming tour of the French Meadows project in Placer County for legislators next week. We have an upcoming water forum in Placer County as well on in November 16th, where we bring together for a day of discussion around different topics. This year, Director Bailey has been extremely helpful in kind of helping identify a topic around the 20 by 30, and we'll have another topic around water use efficiency, as well as potentially the sort of off topic, we would think, from Mountain Counties Water Resources Association, but we have really been focused on, because the legislative committee really been focused on the advanced clean fleet regulations that you all are going to need to comply with. And it's starting in 2027, I think, for a number of us. So we'll have a workshop on that as well. I'm really proud of the advocacy and the legislative advocacy platform that we launched just this year. So through the history of Mountain Counties Water, they've contracted with lobbyists on and off. And I really felt that it was a priority for us to carve out our budget to support the advocacy of the association and its members, mainly because a number of our members, the majority of our members are much smaller districts than ours and do not have the resources that larger districts may have to conduct some of their own advocacy. So we get to serve as that arm for that as a collaborative focus. We have two ledge advocates who work on our behalf each legislative session, and they work at the direction of our legislative committee, which has been extremely active since we restarted up at the beginning of the year. You may be aware, and I know you all are aware, that there were several water rights bills this year that were of key importance to us. Two of them luckily are not moving forward. One is moving forward in amended fashion. We were heavily involved in advocating against those water rights bills. Those are going to be coming back every year. I feel until something happens, we've got to continue this fight. So that's going to be something that we will see again. A second piece of legislation that we've been working really hard on is AB 338, which is a carryover. Actually, it was vetoed last year by the governor after we launched a very impressive opposition campaign to the coalition. AB 1717 of 22 sought to enact prevailing wage enforcement projects. Ultimately, as I referenced, it was vetoed. We're grateful for that. Came back this year in the same form by AB 338 and remained in the same form in terms of the content of the bill. It's identical up until the last day of the legislative session. So we advocated throughout the entire legislative process with the Natural Resources Administration, tried to engage with the author's office. Ultimately, the amendments that came out at the 11th hour were a step in the right direction for us, but nowhere near where we needed to be. So we remain in opposition. We've issued veto letters, request letters on this legislation as well. I referenced the advanced clean fleet regulations that have come up, and there's legislation right now that we've supported and just asked the governor to sign AB 1594, and that's related to exempting water agencies. So we're hoping that legislation goes through. We're still planning to work on these advanced clean fleet regulations. It's not exempting them, it's giving them the opportunity to purchase gas fueled vehicles if you fall within a number of these certain categories, exclusions. Again, step in the right direction, not where we need to be, but we continue to work on the advanced clean fleet regulations through our work group as well. This year, our advocacy team, through our ledge committee, really wanted to streamline our advocacy efforts. As you know, there's thousands of bills that are introduced each year, and Sacramento's a wild place, and there were a lot of new legislators this year, as there will be again in 2 years. And there was a lot of deference given to new legislators who were very anxious to introduce a lot of legislation that just moved very quickly. So we needed to streamline our advocacy efforts, and so we decided to take our bill list and really categorize it into 3 different categories, buckets. The first being engage, where we're full steam ahead, support or oppose. The second being watch, and the third being monitor. Our principles and our strategic priorities, of course, fall into priority 1 status for engage, and those are really where we focused a lot of our efforts. That number of done with the water rights bills, as I referenced, EV 338, as well as the advanced clean fleet regulations. During the strategic planning process, the board and then the membership provided the opportunity for myself to have direction in terms of how we move forward with our strategic priorities. And so these next few slides, which I'll go back over, outline some of the objectives that fall within each of those strategic priorities. And you can see some of them are deliverables, others are ongoing. Developing an advocacy platform to be used, that was developed and it's going to be ongoing. Developing an educational initiative around the awareness of the importance of concern about watershed. That falls into our statewide collaboration as well as the headwaters. We are working right now on a water rights educational webinar. We have a contract attorney on board who is an expert in water rights and has pulled together a really good content and presentation on the subject. Initially, we're going to have a larger event that we're going to be putting on until next year, but so in the meantime, we are going to work on holding a webinar about the definition of water rights and really the importance of protecting them. And again, for outreach and education, those webinars are open, of course, to members, but they're really available too for those who don't understand the importance of things that we're protecting. Again, forest management, a big component of what we focused on as a water advocacy association, which is interesting. But it continues to be an issue. It's certainly this year, but guys. And again, the statewide collaboration, really just to focus on our enhancement of relationships throughout the state and the outreach and education around the importance of protecting the water resources in the Mountain Counties region and why that's important for the rest of the state. I think we first saw, that was very brief, we first saw the connection during the Rim Fire when San Francisco felt that their water was starting. There was a little bit of a connection there that dissipated pretty quickly. We saw some connection when we would see the fires, but the smoke would impact the Bay Area, and so it's really those sort of opportunities where we need to remind people that this is why it's important for them to be involved here and to support our efforts and support resources coming to this region. This is just the water supply slide around water storage capacity. And I do want to end with, so as I referenced, we have 57 members. We have 6 board meetings, typically a year. We have board meetings spread out throughout our region as best possible and hosted by members. And then we usually try to hold a reception the evening prior in the region that we're at and invite local electeds and key leaders from the community to kind of come and learn about what it is that Mountain County is about. So we welcome you all to join us at any of those upcoming events. We also have our water forum on November 16th that we love to have you at. But with that, and we open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Justin. I have a question regarding the legislation proposed for the water rights. I know 2 of them were not killed, but like they were stopped.
Yeah.
That third one, can you give us a little more detail on where it's at?
Yeah, so good question. I just realized this has been I don't know if that's wrong.
Keep it.
Yes. Good idea. Yes, we currently have Tom Custon, who is our attorney, looking into sort of where this is landed right now. I will say that from, I'm not a lobbyist, but from my cursory view of what has taken place, they have stripped a lot of the authority away from the water board, which is a benefit of, a positive step in the right direction. So that has been really helpful and well received, seems, by those who are making these decisions. I know that certain agencies did a lot of the opposition of that because they felt that was adequate to address them. But I don't know the longer term implications of really, the fine details. We're working on that right now. Yes.
And you mentioned you expect those other two to come back in some fashion. I would expect maybe additional as well.
Yeah, I expect additional attacks on water rights to be taken ways going forward in a number of different fashions. By whom, I'm not sure, and we'll see if this is going to come back, but yeah, that's just going to be something we're going to
And whatever it is, just my personal opinion, but whatever it is, won't be good for communities. Okay, anybody else have any questions? Glenn?
Thank you, Justin. That was an excellent presentation. Appreciate it. Do you have a question? Maybe you could, I know that time is very limited, but I'd like to learn a little bit more about what the agency's doing with water storage capacity.
The interest is really around supporting investments in increased water storage capacity. And so, a lot of sites reservoir, different projects that are coming online, very as you will know. But it's really supporting the policy around increased water storage.
So I know that's something that General Manager Perkins has issue he's raised, and I just wonder how what's being done proactively with your agency and TUD relative to that.
Well, we advocate on behalf of our association as a whole, right? So we have 57 persons we advocate supportive of sites reservoir, supportive of projects that will bring increased infrastructure. Not a lot of that going on. And if you've seen, storms that have been happening in these atmospheric rivers, they're saying they're occurring these days where you're getting a lot of water that's just being wasted.
Right.
So there's not, other than sort of the existing projects and then going out and outreach and providing education around the need and the concern around the loss of water. That's what we're really focused right now.
Yeah, thank you. He stole my question. I was curious what your interest there was and what you had planned, and do you have any other agencies like TUD who are interested in increased storage? Everybody knows, and it isn't Don. This general manager brought up the need for storage. I mean, every general manager since 1947 has said the same thing here. So anyway, that's something I'd like to engage with you later on, but just curious to hear and happy to hear that you're working in that regard.
Yeah, definitely expand. I really like pulling together work groups or ad hoc committees to address a specific subject. Like I said, the water use efficiency standards. We'd be happy to pull them together to talk about, potentially, is there a legislative approach that we could take to help streamline and support SEPA streamlining to support all these different paths, but maybe there's a collective path that we can take legislatively. Yes. Support our region, Senator Alvarado is becoming a champion for us. So we're really appreciative that our state at this really is pivotal for our region. So
For vote, right?
Yeah, this is just kind of a little bit out of the realm, but it seems to me with regulations and bills that come before the assembly, is there any way to stop the repeat? I mean, basically, an assembly bill came through. Can the exact same assembly bill come back around next year?
Yeah, good question. So yes, in fact, that's what we saw with AB 1717 that became AB 38. So AB 1717 made it all the way through the legislative process, and then it was vetoed by Governor Newsom. In his veto message, he said, work with my administration of natural resources to fine tune a couple of these points and come back to me. They did not do that throughout the entire process until the 11th hour, though the discussions were going on behind the scenes. We were well aware of the proposed amendments, but they weren't in print. And so we were negotiating on the proposed amendments, though they weren't in print yet, assuming that they were going to be. And then they became in print for 11 hours. So we were able to influence some of that, luckily. Ahead of the 11th hour, there was delays, for instance, in the patient. Very small things, but things nonetheless. But no, the same legislation could have come, and her office could have pushed the identical legislation through. But it made sense because he vetoed it last year, and he wants something different, but they could have.
Just, yeah. Seems like we chase our tail a little bit.
Yeah, they don't give up. Dr. Bailey.
Thanks. I think that in our priorities, we used the word defend because I don't ever recall mountain counties ever letting their guard down when it comes to water rights and having a vigilance like you were, talking about. It never is going to go away. And because we have term limits on our legislators, the educational process is ongoing. And because the majority of the votes in California are in 4 or 5 counties in Southern California, then once they come up here and they see the devastating effects on water, and 65% of the state's water comes from the Sierra, that it's really worth, I know it's really time consuming to get some of these Southern California folks to come up and look at the rim fire, San Francisco, look at the rim fire and look at the scale of destruction. Water drives California's economy. And so we don't let our guard down in okay, you mean another, field trip, aren't these folks educated yet? But because of term, it's a really ongoing process. And those are the folks that we really need to partner with because they have the votes and we don't. So we, the same with the laws about efficiency. You mentioned that they're not, what did you use? They're uniquely detrimental to our county. You see all the lush vegetation as soon as you go down to Modesto, all the water being used, and yet we don't have that clout, I guess, if you will, or because it's kind of a one size fits all regarding conservation and efficiency. So we do a lot of advocacy with our legislators all the time to get work with us in the mountains because we're where the buck stops when it comes to fire and we need help. We are the stewards of the resource. So that's why you do see some forest management, but water rights, I'm glad we use the word defend because that's really where we're at.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about the legislature. I don't know the figure, but I believe it's more than half we're due. And this last legislative session, in 2 years, we've got another 40%. So it really is bringing these legislators in, educate them. It's sort of rinse and repeat, right? We've got to, you've got to kind of the same education and outreach because they're turning over. And then, water use efficiency standards is a good example. One size fits all approach doesn't work for us. And here's all the reasons why. It can be challenging, frustrating, but as a collective, our efforts is stronger, which is really helpful.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. We appreciate you making the trip and letting us know what you guys have been up to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks.
Okay, Melissa.
Okay, item number 6, Adopt resolution declaring October 7th through October 15th, 2023 to be Water Professionals Appreciation Week.
Abby.
Okay, that's me. Good morning still, everyone. Abby Parkon, Administrative Services Director. So it's my pleasure again for the 7th year in a row to present this resolution to make October 7th through October 15th, 2023 Water Professionals Appreciation Week. This started back in 2017. That came through the Senate and then also was championed by Aqua, Association of California Water Agencies. And so many folks are doing this across the state. You know, there are about 60,000 water professionals that are hired every year. This is water is the lifeblood of not only our community, but of every community, and without it, you cannot thrive. We have about 80 employees here at TUD that work many 24/7, 365, all across the organization, different departments. And we just want to take this opportunity to really highlight each and every employee, what they do, their expertise, all the different industry sectors that they perform, and give you an opportunity to adopt that resolution. And if you want to add any comments of your own, you're welcome to do that. So this year, particularly calendar year 2023, our water professionals across the board, we had 2 disasters that were proclaimed by the state of California that we're working through still with FEMA to get public assistance on. We had multiple enhanced power safety shutoffs, which are now the new thing rather than the public safety power shutoffs. So they're not planned anymore, they just happen. So you all have probably dealt with that at your own homes with 200 and some on maybe close to 300 facilities across our water system. That's quite a feat for 80 people to try and manage widespread power outages, which we've done very successfully. We've gotten better and better at it every year, and but it's very hard work and it's very time consuming, and a lot of people drop everything in their personal lives to come out and take care of that. We had also this year a widespread cellular outage across the county. You all felt that too for over 24 hours. That was quite a hit to our system. A lot of our staff had to, again, kind of scramble for sort of a new situation that we hadn't dealt with before, both in operations, on our IT side with Corey, SCADA, all of that, because we are highly dependent on all of those electronic systems and our cellular data. And just communication in general, just making sure that we could continue to communicate in that way. We also had numerous electrical storms with lightning and damaging many of our facilities. So that was something new that we've been dealing with as well. And so again, time after time, we call on our employees and they're there. Not to mention where we have an ongoing, the largest project we've ever had here at the district with the wastewater treatment facility, and the complexity of that, and our engineering staff and our wastewater staff. And so really proud of that with all of that going on. We've applied for 12 grants in 2023. We have 2 that were already awarded, 7 are pending. A few of them did get denied, but all of that to say that across the board, you know, we've had a very busy year, and I just really want to recognize all the department staff across the board. And so with that, I will read through the resolution. It's very similar to what you've heard in years past, but I do think it's important to read through it. And then again, you'll have an opportunity to comment after I'm done. So with that, this is a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Tuolumne Utilities District declaring Water Professionals Appreciation Week. Whereas water is the lifeblood of California, and without safe and reliable water, no community and no sector of the economy can thrive or expand. And the water industry is proud of the important role our essential workers play in making sure our communities have safe and reliable drinking water. And thanks to technological advances by highly skilled and trained water professionals and the dedication of thousands of industry professionals in the state and the 80 employees here at TUD, California drinking water and treated wastewater meet some of the most stringent water quality standards in the nation. And regardless of where you live originates, your drinking water is filtered, cleaned, tested, and distributed in a process carefully managed by trained water professionals. And California is steadily expanding the reuse and treated wastewater and pioneering the use of advanced purification recycled water to replenish aquifers, prevent seawater intrusion, and improve local water supply reliability. Water professionals at local public water and wastewater agencies like ours work 24/7 to plan for the future, maintain and upgrade their systems, and improve the safety and resiliency of local water supplies of their communities. And thousands of essential water, wastewater, and recycled water industry professionals in the state dedicate their careers to keep drinking water, recycled water, and treated wastewater safe and reliable for use by Californians. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Tuolumne Utilities District hereby declares October 7th through 15th, 2023, Water Professionals Appreciation Week, and extends its sincere gratitude and appreciation to the water and wastewater professionals who work 24/7 to provide excellent essential services to our community every day. And so during the week of October 7th through the 15th, we have some activities planned just to engage our employees, let them know that we appreciate them, and that not only during that week, but every week we're here. So with that, I'll open it up to the board for any questions or comments. Thank you.
Being for happy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you. Anything to add?
No,
Anyone?
you did good.
Thank you.
All right, well then, we need public comment on this? We don't, do we? Okay, I'll open up public comment. None here, Corey, on the web?
No.
Okay, bring it back to the board. Would you like to make a motion to approve that resolution?
I would like to move that we approve the resolution.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution for Water Professionals Week. Thank you, Abby. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Good job, Abby. Thank you. Okay, Melissa?
Okay, item number 7, update on district operations for August 2023.
Okay, good morning. I know Director Ringham was really looking forward to hearing from Eric Hall today, but he had to be down there at Regional, which is where him and a lot of staff are spending a lot of time down at Regional getting ready. There's an awful lot of training going on a regular basis, and it's just time to everybody has to pay attention. So I'm pitch hitting for Eric. I'll go through. He had some notes for me, thankfully. So on the raw water, he wanted to mention that we had vegetation management around plumes, and we did some plume inspections. We did some road maintenance along and around different sections of the Eureka Ditch. We installed 20 new meters. That's the grant funded project. So making some progress there. I'm not sure how many more we have to go, but that's good. And there was a leak on the lower Columbia ditch that was repaired. Water treatment, the results of the algae treatment out there is success. I mean, I drink the water every day, well, when I'm around, and personally, it's the best I've seen the water taste really in all of my time here. So finally, we're getting some traction there. We have a new regulatory compliance specialist, Rachel Taylor. Trevor's doing a lot of training there, and I've met her, and she seems like she's going to do a great job for TUD. I think she's a quick learner. And of course, we'll continue with the Sonora water treatment plant improvements. On the distribution side, the Mono Village tanks, now both the tank A and C are drained. They've done some work to replumb to tank C, welded an inspection hole and refilled tank C. So tank C is the tank that's remaining online and will be online until the other two tanks are taken down, a new one's constructed, and it's online. Then we'll take the third tank down, and all three of those tanks will be offline. We hope to get that done in about 12 months, or maybe a little under 12 months now, hopefully. They're continuing to work at Millville on that grant-funded project. Both the well and the hydromatic station is being worked on. There's progress there. And the Zone 4 tank, the 500,000 gallons, still welded tank pump stations in progress. I look forward to getting back up there and see they're starting to actually weld the tank cut section. So I'm not sure how many rings there are, but they're moving. Construction and maintenance, besides the construction projects that they're all working on, they've had to deal with 4 mainline leaks, 17 service leaks, while they installed 6,760 feet of pipe on Mount Provo. And again, they got their hand in on the Zone 4 tank as well. Wastewater collection, Miwok Sewer Lift Station, CAL FIRE Defense Space Program, repaired clean out at the Willow Springs Creek Line. And the Millville Sewer Lift Station, there's been some lockout tag out work there, so Kiewit can move some of the pipeline for work at regional. Wastewater treatment, continue working with ranchers to keep courts moving in the right direction. Again, a shortened and mild irrigation season after a very long and wet rainy season. We have courts just a little higher than we'd like it to be, but it's moving in the right direction. But you know, it's really important that we work with the ranchers to keep irrigating as much as we can. And then lastly, Abby mentioned this too, but you know, that AT&T outage, it just, again, these things identify the weaknesses that we all have. We're so used to being connected in every way, from internet to cellular service, that when it's not there, it's troublesome, right? So, but I know Corey and Eric and everybody has worked out some bugs. Nothing like the old handheld radios. They continue to work just good. So anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Questions for Don? Director Reagan.
I don't have any question, but just a comment. As usual, I read every word in that report. It was really extensive, and the only thing I can say is that it's an amazing amount of work that is being accomplished by the TUD employees, and I'm really proud of them. It's just amazing what's getting accomplished.
Thank you, Ms. Aaron. So yeah, you know, Abby said it in her appreciation piece there. There's no shortage of challenges here. If every day was like today, we'd have challenges. There'd just be normal challenges. But then you throw extreme weather, winter, extreme drought, extreme wind, long power durations, outages. I mean, there's no shortage of challenge here. And yet we don't have a choice in the matter but to succeed every day. Every day we have to do our job. And I'm just really proud of the commitment of this board to support the staff the way you do, and the staff that they show up every day. I'm proud of them too. We're getting it done. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Don. All right, Melissa, next one.
Staff reports.
Anybody else have anything else? Steve,
Yeah, plenty for me.
thought I'd give you one more shot. Eric, anything to report?
Very briefly, I just want to elaborate on what Don referenced in terms of the regional wastewater treatment plant. Usually you'll have an update at this board meeting, and we had a long agenda, so that didn't happen. But in the next few weeks, we hope to put water through the plant. Before that time, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. There's about 90 instruments out there that measure pressure, flow, level, chlorine, dissolved oxygen, you know, all sorts of things. Those all need to be calibrated and put into service. All the communications need to be tested between those instruments and the computer system, the PLC system that's controlling the plant. And then there's a lot of integration with our engineer and the contractor to make sure all of those are synced, working correctly. And then also we have a lot of training going on. So I think Don referenced that today. We have training for scum pumps tomorrow, as well as the filters. Today we do have some training related to the chemical feed pumps. Next week we have our training on the aeration basins, and that's the primary driver for the treatment system there. So there should be a lot to report. And when you take your tour as part of IRWM, those of you that are participating, you should be able to see a plant that's pretty well advanced, and hopefully you'll be able to see some water flowing through it. That's all I have to report.
Thanks, Eric. Abby. Or Director Boatright, did you have a question? Okay, that looked like you were ready to raise your hand.
Maybe I flinched.
Abby, do you have anything
Well,
else?
I just want to point out, it was in your ops report, but Oz Jardine in our wastewater treatment department obtained his grade 1 operator certificate. So we're proud of Oz, and it's exciting when you go from OIT to grade 1. So you can sort of let them loose, according to their certification level, but they can work independently, and it certainly helps the department. He's been a really good addition. So congratulations to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. That's a good point. Director Bell.
Abby, can you mention about the vaccines for tomorrow? Is there, right? Just make an
Sure, you should
announcement.
have all gotten information that we are having flu shots here tomorrow, and potentially any others that you may have signed up for. Rite Aid's coming here for employees and for board members. So if you didn't already get that information or sign up, please let me know after the meeting or contact me via email today and we'll get you ready. It's from 11 to 12 tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for Abby? Okay. Appreciate it, staff. We'll move on to Director's Communications. Who wants to go first? Let's start with, how about we just do it in order? How about Glenn? You just start down at that end and we'll just move right across.
Short and sweet, I have nothing to report.
Okay. Director Banner.
Okay, yes, the ditch committee met and we reviewed the work that's going to be going on during the ditch outage. No recommendation, but we also did discuss some issues regarding the ditch. To see if I can bring them up really quickly. Bear with me. It was the the policy to protect the infrastructure, also public awareness and education, which would include the county and property owners for managed recreational trail users, vegetation management, and develop setbacks to water quality and for maintenance and fire protection. And with that, and again, there's no recommendations, just what we are moving into an era where we're going to be using the ditch for non-potable water for fire fighting. And with that, I don't know, Don, if we had sent out a press release for that substantial grant that we got with some of the accomplishments would be wildfire risk mitigation for the TUD infrastructure and the wildfire protection draft points plan for the raw water ditch. So we did receive, what was it, 200 and something $1,000. And I don't know, did we have a press release on that so the public knows what we're doing? Okay, good.
It was also in our on tap.
Okay, good. Thank you. Just think it's so important that, especially with in the aftermath of the rate increase, because again, using non-potable water throughout the county will benefit the whole county, not just customers. Okay, thank you. And that's it for me.
Director Boatright.
No reports at this time.
Okay, Director Ringen.
Okay. On 9/20, attended the T-Stan, Irwin, WAC, and JPA meetings. That organization is just really cooking. We're in the process now of identifying multiple grant opportunities, which will save the ratepayers a ton of money. And so we went into getting new projects into the plan so that when a grant comes up, we can try and match it with a project. And there's other things we're doing too. I mean, that we're working on the website so that we can educate anybody as to what we have done, how many millions of dollars in grants we brought in so far, and where we're going. So a lot going on in that group. And then on 9/21, I attended the TUD Ditch Committee meeting, and I thought it was, I thought it turned out really well. I think it was well worth everybody's time. And then yesterday, I had my phone meeting with Lauren Gerson, and that was kind of interesting. So I won't get into that too much, but other than just she was looking for general information as to what she should maybe be looking for a finance director. And then I've got a couple of things I wanted to bring up. Director Balin some time ago brought up that she wanted to see either agenda item or a workshop or something on ADUs and ADLs. And as General Manager Perkins knows, that's something that is really important to me. And so I just want to kind of bring the hammer down and say, let's get it on, let's do it. Then also, I think that there should be some sort of discussion on employee succession and see if we can tune that up. And the last thing is, I think we should have a either a workshop or an extended agenda item in the near future about I got my new TUD water bill, and so they're going out, and I think that it would be very, very helpful if we had a discussion around what CIP projects really are and what we have been accomplishing and what we have planned to accomplish with this increased rates. I think it would be very important for people to know that their money is not being squandered. It's being used to help them, to keep them in good, clean water and safe sanitary sewer service. So especially with the clown show that went on over there at CCWD, we don't want any of that over here. And you know, when you look at the projects that have been done, they are all over TUD's area of influence. So this is, and what we're repairing and replacing is junk that was handed to us when the county handed it over and formed TUD. So I think it's really important to educate the ratepayers and the public as to where that money's going and how it's being used.
Thank you, Ron. I've got no reporting on my desk either. So we'll go ahead and close that and we'll go to the closed session item. Emily, can you read that, please?
Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 of subdivision B of section 549.6.9. One case.
Okay. We'll go ahead and recess
So,
to.
Jeff,
Yeah.
real quick. So we plan to stay in here for this closed session. I think.
One thing, if you stay here, I will have to stop the feed because I can't block the microphone in the video and keep that going as I bring it back. The only thing you can do if you want to keep going is take you to the conference room, call Jesse directly, then you come back.
Well, there's not going to be any reportable action. So I think if we declare that now, the public will know that there won't be any reportable action. And then we can just stay here and close the feed and just make
You
it
concur
simple.
with that, Jesse?
Well, what I would like to do, President Kearns, is it doesn't look, at least looking at the Zoom here, I don't see any members of the public, but you should solicit public comment on this item before the board goes into closed session. And then, you know, at the end, I agree with Don that there isn't going to be reportable action. This is going to be an update. But we should still bring it back into session, open session, and declare no reportable action. It may seem unnecessary, but that's the process.
Yeah.
What I can do is I can lock the Zoom meeting. Make sure nobody else didn't lock the Zoom meeting and stop the YouTube. We just say YouTube's done. And.
Yeah. Well,
So
what do you want to do, Don? Is it,
Yeah, like lock everybody else.
is it a big deal to go into the conference room? Or not?
We could just call up Jeff and here for the conference.
And just have them on the phone.
No, we could do the Zoom meeting with, or call on the phone. Sure.
It just seems so simple. Just sit right here and continue.
Yeah,
this
I'd
meeting.
like to sit right here, but if
But
we're
if
gonna
we,
run the risk of broadcasting or closed session, I don't want to do
Well,
that.
we could, like I said, we can stop Zoom, we can stop YouTube.
Thank you.
And YouTube, and then we could just block the Zoom meeting so nobody.
Okay.
It's a waiting, so nobody's allowed.
All right. Well, as long as it's secure, then I'm fine with it. Okay. Yes, I am. Okay, then we're gonna go ahead and recess into closed session, and we're gonna take, let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll start that. Thank you.